In the headlines, a UN General Assembly committee passes a resolution calling for referring North Korea to the International Criminal Court for human rights violations. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's envoy meets with Russian President Vladimir Putin and delivers a personal letter from Kim, according to the Kremlin. No further details out on the closed-door meeting. And a small group of Hong Kong pro-democracy protesters break into the city's government building as tensions escalate following a period of relative calm. Hello and welcome to the show, coming to you live from Seoul. I am Kang Tae-ri. We begin with news coming out of the UN headquarters in New York, where a committee has adopted a resolution on North Korea's human rights abuses. It's the strongest worded resolution to date and calls for Pyongyang to be brought to the International Criminal Court. Hwang Ji reports.
A UN Human Rights Committee approved a resolution on Tuesday which calls for the Security Council to refer North Korea to the International Criminal Court for alleged crimes against humanity. The resolution, drafted by the European Union and Japan, passed overwhelmingly with the support of 111 countries. 19 members opposed it and 55 abstained. The approval came despite last-minute protests by North Korea and its allies. Earlier in the day, Cuba proposed an amendment that would have deleted some lines in the resolution that says North Korean leader Kim Jong-un should face the ICC. The committee voted down that proposal. The original EU-Japan drafted resolution will now be put to a vote at a plenary UN assembly in the coming weeks, but while it mounts extra pressure on Pyongyang, it's unlikely to actually bring about any tangible results in the criminal court. Pundits say China and Russia, both veto-wielding permanent members of the Security Council, will almost certainly use their power to stop the North Korean leader being targeted by prosecutors. The two countries voted for the Cuban proposal while voting against the original one. North Korea fired off some sharp warnings before Tuesday's vote, saying the passage of the resolution would prompt it to conduct further nuclear tests. The vote came after a UN investigative panel concluded in February that officials in the north are responsible for systematic killing, torture, and starvation. Hwang Ji, ARIRANG News.
Although North Korea maintains that it's not for the international community to meddle in its affairs regarding its human rights record, there are detailed accounts from North Korean defectors that make it difficult for the rest of the world to sit back and do nothing. 아리랑's Kim has this report.
2살 난 딸도 그 인신매매로 중국에서 이렇게 이제 그 갈라져 가지고 팔렸고 지금 현재는
도망치고 싶은 생각이 정말 너무 엄청 많았고 막 자유롭게 살고 싶은 생각도 그때 당시 없지 않아 있었습니다.
네, 대한민국에 들어와서 북한이 어떤 나라이고 그토록 참혹하게 제가 어떤 생활을 살았는지 깨닫게 되었고.
These three North Korean defectors say they're still somewhat fearful that North Korean agents may target them. But it's not stopping them from speaking out about their experiences, which they hope will raise awareness of what it's like to live in North Korea under the oppressive watch of the regime. The secluded state has long been criticized for its human rights abuses, with hundreds of thousands of people believed to be in political prison camps. With the United Nations General Assembly poised to vote on a resolution that would refer the North Korean regime to the International Criminal Court for human rights violations, experts say first-hand accounts of those abuses can only solidify the case.
The testimonies of the North Korean defectors are evidence of human rights violations in the North. Their stories help the international community to pressure the North to improve conditions.
The defectors hope this is a first step in the long journey toward unification of the two Koreas.
By coming out to the public and speaking out, I hope it leads to a unified Korea. I hope the day will come when we don't have to be separated, when we can have dinner together and drive to our relatives when we want to see them.
Kim, ARIRANG News.
North Korea's special envoy Choi Ryong-hae sat down for talks with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Will this lead to a summit between Kim Jong-un and Putin? And if it does, what are the implications? Hwang Sung-hee explains.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's special envoy Choi Ryong-hae held an hour-long meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Moscow on Tuesday. The Kremlin said Choi delivered a message from the young Kim, but provided no further details. Pundits say the possibility of arranging a summit between the two leaders could also be a part of Choi's mission. Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabkov had told Russian news agency TASS that the outlook for denuclearization of the Korean peninsula would be the first subject taken up. Choi is being accompanied on his trip by North Korea's chief nuclear envoy Kim Kye-gwan. The North Korean delegation is scheduled to meet with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov on Thursday before heading to the country's far eastern cities of Khabarovsk and Vladivostok to discuss trade and economic projects. North Korea is seeking further cooperation with Russia in the energy and agriculture sectors, while Moscow wants access to Pyongyang's natural resources worth an estimated $25 billion. This marks the third visit by a high-ranking North Korean official to Moscow this year. In October, Foreign Minister Lee Soo-young visited Russia for the first time in 4 years. Experts say these are part of Pyongyang's efforts to diversify its diplomatic partners as it finds itself on the outs with longtime ally China. Hwang Sung-hee, ARIRANG News.
And despite soaring tensions on the Korean peninsula, South Korea says the window for dialogue remains open for North Korea. Unification Ministry spokesperson Im Byung-chul said Wednesday that Seoul is still willing to hold high-level talks if Pyongyang drops its unjustifiable demands and shows some sincerity. He added the North can raise a range of pending issues at the meeting, including the resumption of South Korean tours to Mount Kumgang. A second round of high-level talks was scheduled for early November, but was scrapped after the North took issue with anti-Pyongyang leaflets by South Korean activists. The Korean military conducted a large-scale landing exercise off South Korea's southeastern coast, a part of an ongoing annual defense drill. According to military officials, its aim is to prevent enemy provocations, including those from North Korea. Kim Hyun-bin brings us the details.
At the break of dawn, orders are given and amphibious assault landing vehicles infiltrate enemy territory. Marines hop off the tanks, secure a perimeter, and soon after, neutralize enemy firepower. Air-cushioned vehicles and transport crafts storm in with supplies and heavy arms, while the Korean-made K-1 tank provides fire support. This joint amphibious landing exercise is part of the annual Hoguk exercise, which began in 1996. This year's drill is the largest ever.
Our Navy and Marines get realistic training through this exercise for operations that play a decisive role during war.
The orders are given out 20 miles away from the Asia's largest transport ship, the Tokdo LPX. It is used as a command center, coordinating operations and giving orders to the people manning attack helicopters and armored vehicles. Over 1,400 Marines, 20 vessels, and other amphibious vehicles were involved in this year's exercise. Chief of Naval Operations, Admiral Hwang Gi-chul, emphasized the importance of the drill during a visit to the command center.
Our military's core value dictates we conduct a powerful drill. Through that, we will be able to prevent enemy provocations and come out victorious.
This year's 6-day exercise is aimed at enhancing the Korean military's amphibious landing capabilities and runs through Thursday. Kim Hyun-bin, ARIRANG News.
Former Japanese Prime Minister Yukio Hatoyama has blamed sitting Prime Minister Shinzo Abe for strained ties with South Korea and China. Speaking at a forum held in South Korea's Busan, Hatoyama said that Abe's visit to the Yasukuni Shrine last December resulted in repercussions from Seoul and Beijing. The controversial shrine honors some 14 Class A war criminals from the Second World War, which the ex-Prime prime minister said it should be removed from before any sitting prime minister pays a visit. The former prime minister also called on the Japanese government to stand by its 1993 Kono statement, an apology made by then Japanese administration on the issue of wartime sexual enslavement.
For the latest in news that impacts Korea and the world, join Kang Chae-ri for a lively half hour that covers politics, business, international news, and much more. Live at 8 every weeknight on ARIRANG TV.
Human Rights Council headquarters in Geneva on Thursday, finding ways to... Amid backlash from the agriculture community over Korea's free trade agreement with China, President Park Geun-hye reached out on this Wednesday, vowing to minimize damage to the sector and calling for new innovations to carry the industry into a new era. Shin Se-min tells us more.
Minimizing the damage to Korea's agricultural sector for the Korea-China Free Trade Agreement is what President Park Geun-hye is promising to the nation's farmers. At an open discussion Wednesday in the city of Ansong, south of Seoul, President Park said the agriculture sector is one of Korea's key industries and that her government would be in close consultations with those involved to make sure their concerns are being heard.
이처럼 개방에 대한 방어적인 대책도 중요하지만 더욱 중요한 것은 우리 앞에 놓인 도전과 변화를 기회로 만들 수 있는 창조적 해법과 할 수 있다는 자신감입니다. 저는 지금 이 순간이 우리 농업과 농촌을 한 단계 더 도약시키느냐 아니면 추락하느냐를 결정짓는 골든 타임이라고 생각합니다. 저는 오래전부터
The president also spoke about ways to revitalize the sector through the integration of information technology. She said the creation of smart farms where farming environments can be monitored in a more efficient manner using biotechnology would be a boon for the sector. While emphasizing the benefits of greater access to the Chinese market, especially for homegrown produce, the president said Korea should continuously utilize free trade deals with its neighboring Asian countries. President Park's promise follows a series of protests and rallies staged by local farmers against the Korea-China FTA, which will remove tariffs on more than 90% of all products traded between the two countries some 20 years after it goes into full effect. Shin Se-min, ARIRANG News.
Falling global oil prices have pushed Korea's producer prices to the lowest level since early 2011. And with this, it could expected to be reflected in consumer prices down the road. Deflation worries could make a comeback. Song Ji-sun has the details.
Korea's producer prices slumped to their lowest point in nearly 4 years in October, due largely to tumbling crude oil prices and strong agricultural harvests. The Bank of Korea says its producer price index fell for the third consecutive month in October to 104.56, down 0.6% from a year earlier and its lowest level since January 2011. Plunging energy prices had a knock-on effect on the prices of industrial products that fell an average of 2.4%. Dubai crude continues to fall like a stone, with the price plunging over 10% last month after dropping 5% in September. The weak global economic recovery is reducing demand for crude, but oil-producing nations in the Middle East are not cutting their output. But that's welcome news for drivers and air travelers, as gas and diesel prices in Korea fell an average of 15% from a year earlier. Agriculture and fisheries product prices also went down, thanks to strong harvests and good catches. Fruit and vegetable prices also tumbled 17% from the previous month. The falling prices have prompted Korea's central bank to slash its inflation outlook for this year by 0.5 percentage point to 1.4%. It has also cut next year's outlook from 2.7 to 2.4%. Song Ji-sun, ARIRANG News.
The push to go green, it's no longer limited to hybrid cars or electric buses anymore. There's also been a surge in the number of fuel-efficient planes crisscrossing the world's skies. Airbus has launched the latest, the A350, and it's here in Korea as part of a 5-nation demonstration tour of Asia. Connie Lee has more.
Say hello to the A350 jetliner, the latest passenger plane from European manufacturer Airbus. It's not officially carrying passengers yet, but has arrived in Korea on the first stop of its 11-day Asia tour. The A350 is massive, but lightweight, different from most other passenger planes.
It's an aircraft that brings together fantastic comfort for passengers, but also brings a lot of efficiency for airlines, saves a lot of fuel, it burns 25% less fuel, and it can carry 300 passengers for around 15,000 kilometers.
The plane boasts impressive fuel efficiency. It uses less fuel because it's lightweight, thanks to its use of carbon fiber in place of steel. However, Airbus is not the only company with carbon fiber planes. Boeing has its own fuel-efficient jetliner, the B787 Dreamliner. Smaller than the A350, this plane uses 20% less fuel than its non-carbon fiber counterparts. Passengers have been able to fly on the B787 since 2011, and Virgin Atlantic was the most recent company to order the B787 last month. Qatar Airways will give the Airbus A350 its first commercial flight in mid-December, and Korea's Asiana Airlines will put its own A350s into operation in 2017. Connie Lee, ARIRANG News.
The next time you're at the grocery store buying soap, make sure to check the label of ingredients first. If it contains triclosan, you might want to steer clear. Researchers say this widely used chemical could potentially damage your liver. Our Lee Ji-yoon has more.
Should you be worried if you just washed your hands with liquid soap? Maybe. Researchers from the University of California, San Diego School of Medicine recently discovered that a common ingredient in many liquid hand soaps, shampoos, and even toothpastes can trigger liver cancer. The ingredient researchers are worried about is called triclosan. According to the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, triclosan is classified as an antibacterial agent added to products to reduce or prevent bacterial contamination. Then how does something that is supposed to keep us healthy end up having the opposite effect? Researchers found that mice exposed to the chemical for 6 months, equivalent to about 18 human years, became more susceptible to liver tumors than mice not exposed to it. Others say triclosan becomes even more harmful when combined with other compounds.
When triclosan is exposed to sunlight, in the water system, it's converted to dioxins, which are carcinogens.
The FDA says it doesn't have enough evidence to recommend an end to the use of triclosan in consumer products. The U.S. state of Minnesota, however, is currently looking into legislation that would ban products containing triclosan in the state. Lee Ji-yoon, ARIRANG News.
Pro-democracy protesters in Hong Kong have tried to break into the city's legislature, sparking clashes with police in the Chinese-controlled territory. To tell us more, we turn to Paul Lee at the News Center. Paul, tensions have once again escalated in Hong Kong at a time when peace and order were returning to the city. How did events play out, and what's been the response from local authorities there?
Well, it began early Wednesday morning when a small group of pro-democracy protesters smashed their way through a side entrance to the Legislative Council building. At least one of the masked protesters reportedly managed to get inside the inner complex before being apprehended by security. The break-in prompted a massive security response and canceled all legislative proceedings for the day. Some 100 riot police then moved in and used pepper spray and batons to disperse the hundreds of other demonstrators who also tried to force their way in. It marks the first time demonstrators have tried to break into a public building since protests began there nearly 2 months ago.
For the past month or so, we have never stopped asking the government to respond to our requests on political reform. But as you can see, while we want dialogue, they have been ignoring our demands.
Hong Kong government officials have condemned the illegal action and warned of consequences for the protest groups. A Democratic Hong Kong lawmaker at the scene said the break-in was an isolated incident carried out by a group of radical activists.
And turning to the Middle East, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has promised a harsh and swift response to the killing of 4 Jewish worshippers in Jerusalem on Tuesday. What specific measures did the Prime Minister talk about?
Well, Netanyahu vowed to demolish the homes of the perpetrators and bring those responsible to justice. He said Israel was in a battle for its eternal capital, Jerusalem, but warned the public not to take the law into their own hands. The latest attack took place at a synagogue in an ultra-Orthodox neighborhood of East Jerusalem. 2 Palestinian men stormed the building with guns and meat cleavers, killing at least 4 Israelis before being shot dead in a firefight with police. One police officer later died of his wounds at a hospital. The Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine claimed responsibility for the attack, which marks the deadliest assault in the Holy City in 6 years amid a surge of religious conflict.
As a nation, we will settle the score with every terrorist and their dispatchers, and we have proved we will do so, but no one must take the law into their own hands, even if spirits are riled and blood is boiling. We are in a long campaign in a war against terrorism that hasn't started today. It accompanies us throughout the Zionism. We always overcame it, and we will this time as well. There are some who want to uproot us from our state and capital. They will not succeed.
In the same address, Netanyahu accused Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas of inciting the secular violence. In response, Abbas strongly condemned the incident during a meeting of Palestinian leaders and said the state would not accept attacks on civilians under any circumstances.
And long under heavy fire for alleged corruption, the world's football governing body FIFA has now turned the tables and filed its own criminal complaint over the bidding race for the 2018 and 2022 World Cups. This is certainly unexpected, to say the least. What's behind this latest move by FIFA?
Well, FIFA ethics judge Hans-Joachim Eckert said it was his duty to lodge the complaint due to what he called possible misconduct among unnamed individuals. But some believe it's another tactic to shift the growing controversy over the winning bids. The world governing body of football said in a statement that there seems to be isolated cases of international transfers of assets with connections to Switzerland that merit examination by authorities. The criminal complaint was submitted to Switzerland's Attorney General on Tuesday. FIFA added that would hand over all 430 pages of a recent confidential investigation by American prosecutor Michael Garcia. Russia and Qatar won the winning contest for the 2018 and 2022 World Cups, respectively.
And finally, Paul, Oscar-winning actress Charlize Theron is backing an urgent new UN campaign that aims to end the global AIDS threat over the next decade or so. She is one of the biggest stars in Hollywood, and she is no stranger to humanitarian causes as well. What's this latest initiative?
Well, it's called the Fast Track Program, and it lays out a set of ambitious targets and a wide range of measures to ensure the world eradicates the AIDS virus by 2030. Theron sat down with UN AIDS Executive Director Michael Sevid at a press briefing in Los Angeles on Tuesday to discuss the global epidemic and outline the new plan. The South African actress, who is an official UN messenger of peace, said her commitment to the cause was stronger than ever.
My focus is really in prevention care with adolescents because those are the most vulnerable subjects that we have right now when it comes to this epidemic. And we can see across the board that AIDS-related deaths are dropping across the board at 30%. And we have a 50% raise with adolescents, especially young girls. And so that's where we have to place the focus right now.
The proposed UN strategy hopes to avert nearly 28 million new HIV infections through health treatment and education programs. Since 1981, some 39 million people have died from AIDS-related illnesses. Charity?
All right, Paul, thank you so much for those stories, and we'll see you back here in just about 2 hours.
everyone, I'm Kim Bo-kyung with the latest weather forecast. It was a warm autumn day and highs here in Seoul reached 11 degrees and numbers will remain in the seasonal average range as the night progresses. A dry weather watch continues to be in effect along the eastern coastline, so stay hydrated if you're in those areas. At the moment, as you can see, we are under mostly clear skies. Tomorrow is shaping up to be another mild day due to warm winds blowing in from the west, so morning lows should jump about 3 to 4 degrees compared to today. Looking ahead, it looks like showers are forecast on Friday, but things will clear up before the weekend. On to tomorrow's readings. Seoul will mix it to 13, Daegu reaches 16, Busan hits 17. On to other regions. Jeju hits 15, Dokdo 13, Mount Kumgang remains cooler. Those are the updates I have for you now. I'll be back with more after 10.
Thank you so much, Bo-kyung, and that will do it for this edition of ARIRANG News. Thanks for watching.